Hello, I'm Kari Odermann. This is UATV News in English. We're broadcasting from our studios in the Ukrainian capital. Let's have a look at this hour's top headlines. January 12th is the day of Ukrainian political prisoners. People started commemorating those who were repressed, sentenced to severe terms, and sent to the Gulag back in the 1970s after yet another wave of repressions against dissidents and ordinary citizens. They were falsely accused and put on trial for defending human rights and the rights of every person's national identification, freedom of belief, and thought. Today, Ukrainians honor modern dissidents, people who were imprisoned by the Kremlin. A suspect in the murder of volunteer battalion fighter Amina Akuyeva has been detained. Ukraine's Interior Minister says the DNA matched some left on the weapon at the scene. The suspect also attempted to murder Amina's husband. He survived. The detained were previously involved in 2 other solved cases of contract killing in September 2016 and January 2019. Investigators are working to determine who hired the suspects. Euromaidan, the Heavenly Hundred, the annexation of Crimea, and Russia's aggression in eastern Ukraine. These words and phrases have entered into the lexicon of every Ukrainian over the past 5 years. They're also known beyond Ukraine's borders. Let's take a closer look at this dictionary of sorts in this next story.
EU-Ukraine Association Agreement. On November 29, 2013, Viktor Yanukovych refused to sign Ukraine's association agreement with the European Union. This abrupt change in foreign policy led to protests across Ukraine. In the early hours of November 30th, security forces brutally dispersed around 400 protesters at Kyiv's Independence Square. 79 people were injured. Euromaidan, Maidan, Revolution of Dignity. The violent crackdown turned the pro-European rallies into anti-government ones. More and more people joined the protest, which later became known as the Revolution of Dignity. The Heavenly Hundred. This is how Ukrainians refer to 106 activists who were killed in the clashes during the Revolution of Dignity. Most people were shot between 18th and 20th of February at the Institutska Street. Today, the part of the street is known as the Alley of Heroes of the Heavenly Hundred. Russia's annexation of Crimea. On the 20th of February 2014, Russia launched a full-scale invasion of the Ukrainian peninsula. So-called Little Green Men, armed and without insignia, appeared in Crimea. In fact, they were regular Russian military personnel. On the night of February the 27th, Russian special forces seized the building of the Crimean parliament and government. In March, the occupational authorities held a sham referendum on whether Crimea should be part of Russia. The international community condemned the referendum and did not recognize its results. Russian aggression in eastern Ukraine. The next stage began when Russia and its proxies started military operations in the Donbass, violating the territorial integrity of Ukraine. On April 7, 2014, Russian-led forces seized administrative buildings in the Donetsk, Luhansk and Kharkiv regions. On April 14th, Alexander Turchinov, then acting president of Ukraine, announced the start of the anti-terrorist operation. It was the start of Russia's war in Ukraine, which is still ongoing. On the captured territories, pseudo-republics were created. They are controlled and financed by the Kremlin. As a result of Russian aggression, 44,000 square kilometers or 7% of Ukraine's territory were occupied. According to the UN, at least 13,000 people were killed as a result of this hybrid war. Reported by OLHA MYKHALIUK, UATV.
Today marks 111 years since the birth of Ukrainian artist Maria Primachenko. For over 60 years, she painted naive art. Her works were showcased in Montreal, Paris, Prague, Warsaw, and Sofia. She was praised by both Pablo Picasso and Marc Chagall. Learn more about her life and her art in this next story.
Maria Primachenko was born in 1908 in a village of Bolotnya outside of Kiev. Since childhood, she suffered from polio and had to constantly use crutches to help her walk. Due to her illness, she was unable to finish school and go to art school. However, despite this, she spent all of her life painting.
Over her life, she created more than 2,000 paintings. Our family has preserved a large collection of them. There are many paintings which the world hasn't seen yet. When she was alive, she often gave her paintings to her friends and acquaintances. Many of them are kept in museums now.
Maria Primachenko was a representative of naive art. She did not mix paint and used the cheapest ones. She also made all of her brushes herself, from cat hair. Fantastic beasts became her hallmark. Primachenko's style is recognized not only in Ukraine, but across the world.
Everyone knows who Maria Primachenko is. Ukrainians think that she isn't well known in the world, but no. When I travel the world, many artists are familiar with Maria Primachenko's art.
Maria Primachenko worked without rest. As soon as she finished one painting, she started working on another one. Her works were showcased in France, Canada, Poland, the Czech Republic, and Bulgaria. Paintings are only one part of her art. Maria also sewed and embroidered clothing and made jewelry. She left one of her necklaces to her great-granddaughter, Anastasia.
She saved it for me. Before her death, she asked for it to be given to me. It so happened that this is my favorite color. If I'm upset, I pick it up and it inspires me.
In Maria Primachenko's honor, Ukrainians name streets, put up monuments, and open exhibitions dedicated to her work and life. There's even a minor planet in the solar system named after her. Reported by Artem Holub for UATV.
This is the last live English news from UATV. The Ukrainian government has decided to direct its resources away from its international broadcasting arm and to close the Arabic, Crimean Tatar, and English language departments. Over the past 3 years, the English news service team, made up of translators, editors, reporters, designers, anchors, and technical staff here at UATV, have worked together so news about Ukraine, from Ukraine, could be broadcast. This is our final story.
Dozens of Russian state media channels and propaganda outlets broadcast to the occupied territories in eastern Ukraine, as well as other parts of Donetsk and Luhansk regions. UATV was one of the few Ukrainian outlets available. It was watched both by soldiers and civilians.
These soldiers who watched us on the front line did not pay attention to the language of our broadcasting. Some of them even watched news in English. There are many soldiers fluent in English.
When the channel was launched on October 1st, 2015, it broadcasted in Ukrainian, Russian and English. Later, it was expanded and launched UATV Arabic and Crimean Tatar.
Hello, my name is Kari. You're watching UATV News in English.
Украина в фокусе новостей на UATV. В студии Дарья Вершиленко. Здравствуйте.
Ассаламу алейкум ва рахматуллах. Нушрат al-akhbar.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bu UATV.
Over the course of 4 years, UATV was connected to almost 400 cable networks and broadcast to nearly 30 countries in Europe, North America, Asia, Africa and the Middle East.
The concept of UATV is to convey information about what's really happening in Ukraine to the world, in particular Arabic-speaking countries, that it's not a civil conflict in Ukraine and not some disagreements between politicians, that it's a real aggression by Ukraine's neighbor.
One of the most exciting and newsworthy moments that I can remember is what happened in the Kerch Strait when the Russian Navy attacked and captured Ukrainian vessels and Ukrainian sailors. We were the first to get commentary from Ukrainian officials in English to the world.
UATV's war correspondents covered exclusive stories from the front line in eastern Ukraine. They reported about the lives of those who returned from the front line. Along with Ukrainian veterans, Anastasia FEDCHENKO conquered Hoverla, the country's highest mountain.
You can see the military that climbed the highest peak of Ukrainian Carpathians, which is 2,061 meters above the sea. Though they have prosthetic legs, I shared the truth with the world that Russia unfolded the war against us. The Russian aggressor invaded the territory of Ukraine.
British instructors I spoke to last year, they said actually they were learning from the Ukrainian soldiers. So it's not just them teaching the Ukrainians, it's also the other way around as well, and how this benefits both countries.
UATV's parliamentary correspondents covered firsthand the most important sessions.
За 279 рішення прийнято.
You can't even imagine what an honor it was for me to report in particular to our Russian audience about the voting of the Ukrainian parliament for the official military greeting. As the Russians call it, the Nazi slogan, "Glory to Ukraine." I had goosebumps when the MPs were voting for it.
And now the cadets of the National Academy of the Security Service of Ukraine are greeting the minister.
Commenting on this very parade became a real challenge for UATV English news presenter OLES GARDZHUK.
It was live. The parade was lasting for about 3 hours. So I was sitting in a dark room for 3 hours with my microphone being switched on the whole time. So I couldn't drink. I couldn't have a sip of water. I couldn't breathe loudly. I couldn't cough, but I wanted to.
This was not the only challenge OLES recalls. Last year at the Ukraine Reform Conference in Canada, he and his colleague ANASTASIA conducted over 30 interviews in just 2 days. Another news anchor, Kari Odermann, had a chance to interview the US Ambassador to the European Union, SONDLAND.
The three amigos are Secretary Perry, again Ambassador Volker, and myself. And we've been tasked with sort of overseeing the Ukraine-US relationship.
Eventually, this talk was quoted by CNN, The Washington Post, and The New York Times.
The question I asked seemed like a pretty innocent question. What brings you to Ukraine? It was his answer and his choice to share with us that President Trump had given him the mandate to be a special envoy of sorts here in Ukraine that then became very, very relevant in the depositions leading up to the impeachment.
UATV stops updating news on January 13th. Instead, the Ukrainian government decided to launch a new TV channel for the occupied territories.
I clearly understand that I do not want to say goodbye to our audience. I only say see you soon, because I am sure that each of the viewers appreciates what we are doing.
Without UATV and without English language content about Ukraine going out into the world from Ukraine, you could potentially have aggressive narratives from aggressive countries being put out about Ukraine to the world. And that's what I don't want. That's what I don't want to happen.
So from the whole team at UATV, thanks for watching.
And that's all we have for you from UATV, and not just for tonight. This is our last English news broadcast, and the next time these studio lights go on, it'll be to support a new and important initiative to make sure those living on the front line in eastern Ukraine have better access to information about Ukraine and the rest of the world in Russian. Giving people factual information in a language they understand is undoubtedly a very important task. I can attest to that. It's been my honor to provide the rest of the world with news about Ukraine in English with UATV. In just the past few days, the downing of the Ukrainian airliner 752, Ukraine has again found itself in a global focus. By broadcasting from Kyiv, we brought the people in the stories to you. We showed the soldiers on the front line. We also had to report about their deaths. We spoke about new initiatives, wide-sweeping reforms, and positive economic outlooks. We reminded about the past, the Battle of Ilovaisk, Babin Yar, the Holodomor. At least for now, the signal from this studio will be directed to the east. But Ukraine, it has its sights set on the west. Thank you for watching, and thank you for sharing your time with us. I'm Kari Odermann.